Hi everybody, this is Luke. Are you familiar with speedruns? I think a lot of people are starting to become more aware of them as they become a more mainstream esport thanks to charity events like the biannual Games Done Quick marathons. And if you haven't heard of them before, the basic premise is pretty simple. A player attempts to play through a video game from start to finish as quickly as possible, often using exploits in the game's mechanics to accomplish this goal in ways that the game's developers never really intended. This can come in the form of things with terms like zips, getting the character jammed into a place that they shouldn't be and therefore deposited elsewhere at rapid speed. Wrong warps, which are where the player performs a series of tasks that confuses the game's internal logic and allows them to warp to a location that they shouldn't be. Or some very crazy stunts like what's known as arbitrary code execution, which through a complicated series of controller inputs and on-screen cues allows the player to do things like suddenly transport from an early level in the game straight to the end credits. Now, not all speedruns use such dramatic exploits, however. Some are just amazingly technical. Take Super Metroid, for example, which has been so well researched and so thoroughly optimized that players will even use techniques like arm pumping, where the player will consistently switch between Samus's diagonal up and diagonal down shooting stance to save about a single frame per animation cycle off of her run, saving precious seconds over the course of the entire, now roughly 42.5-minute run, at least for the top 6 or 7 players on DeerTier.com in the any % real-time category. Where a damage boost, which is the character purposely running into an enemy to exploit game mechanics where the characters propel backwards when they're hit, can mean the difference between a personal best and being a few seconds short. So what? Why should you really care about speedrunning? What does it have to do with game development? It's just people cheating at the game, right? Absolutely not. Yes, players in the speedrunning community are using techniques that are often way outside the scope of the originally intended game design, but that's the kind of gameplay that honestly, people interested in game development should be most interested in. Because understanding how people are accomplishing these tricks, learning how people play these games, and realizing that speedrunners are not only breaking your game, but they're also the most devoted players your game may ever get, is how you really learn the ins and outs of games and the major pitfalls of game development, especially things like programming and design. Now, I'm really genuinely surprised when I time and again hear that other people in the industry that I know are so dismissive of speedrunning. They don't find it interesting or they don't think it's worth their time, and that's astonishing to me. Nothing teaches you more about your craft than to see it utterly defeated by somebody who, in many cases, knows more about the game you created than you do. You see, speedrunning not only entertains when your job is to both understand and create games, but also helps give perspective about what can possibly go wrong when playing or creating one. I've learned more about potential clipping issues, underflow problems, and methods of sequence breaking than I ever might have before by watching speedruns. I've also gained a real respect for things like tight control, smart level design, and even things like which corners it's okay to cut and not still be lazy. When I was doing QA, which is both where I got my start in the industry and a job I held briefly shortly after an international move back to Canada, I was able to make so much use of the principles that I learned from just watching a speedrun with good commentary. And as a designer, I learned more from watching speedrunning streams on Twitch with good commentary than I do watching some talks from GDC. Now, I know it's going to be a hard sell trying to convince people who aren't already on board about speedrunning to really get into it, but I really want to try, and even if only 1 or 2 of my viewers, hopefully those that are already within the games industry who don't watch them for some unfathomable reason do give them a try and learn to appreciate them, I'll be glad that I made it. So I'm going to hit it from 2 angles: entertainment and education. Now, as far as entertainment is concerned, I really and unjokingly believe that a good speedrun race is just as exciting, if not more so, than watching sports on TV. Back during AGDQ 2014, that's Awesome Games Done Quick, the charity speedrunning marathon that benefits the Prevent Cancer Society around early to mid-January every year, there was a 4-way Super Metroid race that I recommend to anyone that wants to get a feel for how really intense and exciting speedrunning can be. I could try to explain it, but I think it might be better to just link it down below, so watch the video if you haven't seen it before. Hell, rewatch it if you have. I know that I do whenever I think to show it to someone else. And if you want to see some just mind-bogglingly amazing skills in memorization and improvisation, the very same year, both speedrunners Sinister1 and Zallard played through ostensibly the entirety of both Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and Super Punch-Out, both blindfolded. That shit is mind-blowing. And there are some speedrunners out there that are just inhuman with their ability to do tricks that were thought to be only accomplishable by machines. Like when the Wind Waker community figured out how to super swim. I'll link that down below as well. Again, it's better seen than explained. And if you want to learn something, we got you covered. If you want to learn how you can profoundly break a game like Grand Theft Auto Vice City and have an hour to burn, Adam A.K. did an amazing run in AGDQ 2015. That's definitely worth a look. And because he's one of the best commentators around and you can still learn a ton about one of the greatest games from the NES era, I recommend checking out once again Sinister1's tutorial on how to speedrun Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Just the ability to hear and in some cases see what's happening in the background of a game can really give you a lot of insight into how they were designed. And it teaches you to play games in a different way yourself. Even if you can't speedrun, and believe me, I've tried on more than one game and it takes a level of coordination and memorization skill I just do not possess, you can still learn to look at how the game is really behaving and see all those potential points of failure that a possible speedrunner down the line might try to exploit to sequence break your game. And I'm not even advocating that we all start designing our games with speedrunners in mind either. Though there are games that are absolutely built for it, even if the designer doesn't know it going in. Sometimes it's better to think of them as the ultimate hurdle to see if you can make a game solid enough that speedrunners can only break it enough to get an edge, as opposed to totally obliterating one. Because, let's face it, they're going to break it. There's just no way around it. No amount of QA in the development process is going to be able to beat an entire community of people. It just can't be done. Because at the end of the day, your job should be making something that's both fun and works, right? Right. And finally, if you do get interested in speedrunning and want to find out a lot more, I'd suggest that you check out speeddemosarchive.com, which is a massive archive of video game speedruns where you can find just about any mainstream game and a ton of obscure ones as well. And if I didn't convince you to check speedruns out, well, I guess I just wasn't persuasive enough, and that's okay. But give them a chance, seriously. Log into twitch.tv and just search for a game that you're interested in watching. Chances are you'll find someone speedrunning them because it's that popular. I mean, if you're watching this channel and you can enjoy a Let's Play, I really believe that you can enjoy a speedrun. Okay, so this is a short one. You could say I speedran the video today. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. Take care.